Hello, all you cool cats and kittens. This is Chris Cavaleras from FREDERICK Middle School. Hope we're all staying safe, practicing social distancing, and washing our hands during this time of COVID-19. Today, Knox County has asked us, Mr. Chanel and myself, to create a lesson to reintroduce you all to the reform era. What we're going to focus on today is women's suffrage, which is the right to vote. This is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. This all came about due to the Second Great Awakening, where people started getting back into church and started realizing there were many things and aspects of society that needed to change across America. The Second Great Awakening led to many different reform movements, such as the temperance movement, which made the selling of alcohol illegal. It led to prison and mental health reform. It led to education reform. But like I said, we're going to focus on women's suffrage, which is the right to vote. Throughout this, there were several women that would get together in meetings and hold rallies and protest. And they would come together and they would try to expand their rights to vote, to be able to join the workforce, to be able to be seen as members of society and not just second-class citizens. One of the things that they did was they met at Seneca Falls, New York, and they drafted, at this Seneca Falls convention, they drafted a Declaration of Sentiments, which mirrored the Declaration of Independence. They hoped that people would see how men and women should be considered equal and not just all men. Please enjoy this video of introducing the Seneca Falls Convention.
Seneca Falls Convention. The 1848 Seneca Falls Convention was the very first women's rights convention in the United States, kicking off a decades-long struggle for gender equality. Here, we'll tell the story of the Seneca Falls Convention and its lasting legacy, a story that started with a Tea Party. But we'll get into all that in just a minute. First, we have to understand the traditional 19th century gender roles. Men dominated the public sphere by working, voting, or participating in politics, while women stayed home to cook, clean, and raise children. There were restrictions in many states on women voting, owning property, and having control of their own income. One woman who advocated for women's rights in the 19th century was Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a homemaker in Seneca Falls, New York. Born into a progressive family, Stanton grew up highly educated and enjoyed an active social and political life before settling down with a family. But Stanton felt stifled as just a wife and mother to 7 children, longing for a life outside the home. She soon found it in a local group of Quaker women who embraced equality, community, and activism. They invited her to a small social gathering, a tea party, which included a Quaker activist named Lucretia Mott. Mott and Stanton had met years before at an anti-slavery convention in London, but they were denied entry due to their gender. It was during the tea party that Stanton lamented the injustice of a woman's unequal status in society. Her words resonated with the others, so the women decided to hold a gathering that would call attention to the social, civil, and religious rights of women, the first of its kind in the United States. It became known as the Seneca Falls Convention, taking place on July 19th and 20th, 1848, with over 300 people in attendance. Like Stanton and Mott, many in attendance were also active in the anti-slavery movement, including Frederick Douglass, a former slave and abolitionist who was one of the few men and the only African American to attend. At the convention, they read the Declaration of Sentiments, a document drafted by Stanton and modeled after the Declaration of Independence, declaring, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." The sentiments outlined the civil and political rights denied to American women, which included education, property ownership, child custody in the event of a divorce, and most importantly, the right to vote. On the second day of the convention, 12 resolutions were passed and signed by 68 women and 32 men. The Seneca Falls Convention was the first time that American women demanded a change, and it caused quite a stir around the country. Many newspapers mocked them with unflattering political cartoons, while columns ridiculed the convention as dull and uninteresting or insane and ludicrous. One writer declared equal rights for women to be a monstrous injury to all mankind. The wave of negative press was too humiliating for some of the participants to handle, particularly those who had signed the Declaration of Sentiments. Several went as far as withdrawing their names from the document and joining the opposition. The public shaming didn't stop the movement. The impact and promise of the Seneca Falls Convention was undeniable. Women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton felt a renewed sense of purpose and threw themselves headlong into the fight for equal rights. A month later, a second, larger convention was held in Rochester, with the Declaration of Sentiments gaining 107 additional signatures. The Seneca Falls Convention would signal the birth of the women's rights movement. One particular resolution in the Declaration of Sentiments would evolve into a full-fledged crusade, the demand for women's suffrage. Decades of political organizing, marches, and protests would ultimately result in the 1920 passage of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed women the right to vote, something that couldn't have happened without the Seneca Falls Convention.
And now Mr. Chanot will further this lesson with a talk about a few other women.
Thanks, Coach. I'm Mark Chanot. I also teach at Farragut Middle School. So the Seneca Falls Convention was 1848, and we are now celebrating the centennial of the 19th Amendment ratification. So even though the Seneca Falls Convention started the women's movement, it wasn't until almost 80 years later when it would actually be considered ultimately successful. The video mentions Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It does not mention other women, and obviously there were hundreds of women involved in the women's suffrage movement, Carrie Chapman Catt, Alice Paul, to name a few, but also we're going to be dealing with two specifically in this lesson, Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth is an interesting individual because she is a former slave, an African-American woman, very active not only in the women's suffrage movement, but also in the abolitionist movement, which was also another one of the reforms at the time. Sojourner Truth is most famous for her speech titled "Ain't I a Woman?" And we have a video of that I'd actually like to show you. It's a reenactment of the speech. And so let's learn a little bit about Sojourner Truth by looking at her words and deeds. And I hope you enjoy this video. Sorry, it's taking me a while here.
Well, children, well, there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women of the North all talking about rights. These white men gonna be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helped me in the carriages or over mud puddles or gives me in the best place. Ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arms. I have plowed and planted and gathered in the barns, and no man can head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's this they call it? What's this they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. Intellect. What's that got to do with women's rights and Negroes' rights? If my cup will hold but a pot, and yours will hold a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half-measure food? And then that man back there in the black, that man back in the black says that women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. Now, if the first woman that God ever made was strong enough to turn this world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now, they's asking to do it. And you men better let them. Obliged to you. Thank you for letting me speak to you this morning. Now, old Sir Jordan ain't got nothing more to say.
All right, so that's Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman? Obviously, we haven't talked too much about Susan B. Anthony in this video, but you'll get to meet her in a biography that we have on our task for you. Your task that we created is basically a biography of three women: Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and Sojourner Truth. Your task is to read the biographies for each of these three women, and we created a spreadsheet for you, and you can use the spreadsheet to fill in all the information that you're going to need to know regarding these three women and their role in the women's suffrage movement. That's all we got for you today. This is week 2 of your 8th grade social studies task. Stay safe, guys. Stay healthy. Take care of your friends and family, and go out there and be the best you can be.